Okay, that was way simpler than I thought. Hello there, you lucky bastards. Sorry. That was way simpler than they made it look. I'm actually very pleased with how it actually works. Sorry about that. I didn't know it was streaming. Hi, Brandy. I've never seen a YouTuber just whip his subscribers like I do and get away with it. Hell, where's my hat? I need my hat. I'll be right back. Don't worry, I'm wearing pants. The hell is my hat? There we go. There we go. I was wearing pants, right? Yeah. Oh. Uh, well, there's a weekend for the books, eh? Yeah, sorry about the confusion. Now I know how it works. It's actually, I'm very pleased with it, and it's pretty simple. So I can do this. So I'm streaming simultaneously to the premium website and to YouTube again. Later on, hold on. Later on, I don't know where why am I hearing an echo? I'm hearing it from up here. Okay, that's off. Okay, whatever. Watch the stream health. There we go. Meetings being live streamed. Okay. I kind of like that notification. Let you know that I'm streaming live to YouTube. I kind of like that. I'm digging this whole Zoom Pro thing. So today, while I wait for people to draggle in, and I know it's early for a lot of people, I don't care, but I know it's early. I'm going to go ahead. I'll have to shut off the YouTube and go premium only, and I'll record that as well for people to watch later. But let me show you what I was talking about Sunday when I was digging into the background of Crooks. But I was waiting for confirmation. Well, confirmation's come out today. Now, if you don't believe that I found it first, you can go kiss Manny's credit report. But I did, and you watched me do it. I just couldn't show you what it was. But that's called responsible journalism. But I'm going to show you what they didn't show you in today's news. I will show you today's news, but I'm going to show you what they still didn't show you. In the meantime, let me talk about... Good. Thank you, Brandy. Thank you very much. Let me talk about the blob of Jesus. This is not a religious channel, and I'm not trying to disprove religion. But we need to understand the history of Gnosticism and how it's affecting today's iteration of the blob. So let's talk about the blob of Jesus. Jesus is, according to some sources that get conglomerated into these so-called gospels, according to that story, Jesus is going around setting up the kingdom of God. It's a shadow government. It's a temporary autonomous zone everywhere he goes. It's deeply communistic. It's completely communistic. You don't give everything to the church, you drop dead. But once you're in for life. This is more than just a spiritual group. This is a parallel society. This is a subculture. This is a shadow government. They're building a shadow government. It takes them a couple of 100 years, but they take over the Roman Empire. It wasn't an emperor converting to a religion. It was an ecclesia. They called themselves the ecclesia, the ruling class, the worthy ones. This is exactly paralleled in the actual organization of the Soviet Union. And they deliberately said, so one of the Soviet one of the authors of the Soviet Constitution said, we are putting the principles of the Christian church into practice, that they never really put into practice. The current institution of the church was irreparably corrupt, and we're shutting it down. But they had the right idea, and we're going to implement it the way they should have implemented it and never did themselves. This was the idea behind the Soviet Union, right? In order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and act and remember. My point was this: the Communist Party of the Soviet Union was the ecclesia of the Soviet Union. If you weren't a member of the party, you didn't participate in government at all, except at your local worker Soviet. You didn't have to be a party member. To rise above that, you had to join the party, or you weren't going to get anywhere. And it was so bureaucratic and so fair and so many checks and balances, the system itself froze up. And they never fixed it because it was the perfect plan. Therefore, it didn't need to be fixed. That was a huge failing on their part. Dogma. They would not look at results. They were literally following the science, the political science. But they would not look at the results and make adjustments. That was their problem. So, like, instead of a president, they didn't want the potential of a monarch or a dictator. So there was no president. There was a presidium, a committee of presidents that presided over a committee of Soviets. Not a cabinet where cabinet officials have power to issue orders and make changes. No, ma'am, no, sir. That is not how that worked. But there was a commissariat of ministers presided over by a presidium. A committee. The system just froze up. But instead of fixing it, they started at the local level and the top levels working around it and fudging data. Blaming each other instead of fixing problems. So you end up with the Communist Party, which sets themselves up as the ecclesia, the overseers. They are the cultural avant-garde, the political avant-garde. This is a stepping stone to creating a true communist state, this utopia that the Communist Party has already designed, but the Soviet industrial socialist state was a stepping stone. But it would, every step of the way would be babysat by the ecclesia. So you end up, the ecclesia becomes a shadow government in its own perfect state, because it's built a machine that has frozen up and it can't find the oil can, which is doubt, which is the ability to change your mind and to say, maybe we were wrong. They outlawed that, literally outlawed that. Well, the party did. See, that's the party. That was not encoded in the law of the Soviet Union. But the party, which ran everything as babysitters, as ecclesia, as episkopoi, bishops, they had a rule that once their committees got together and made a decision, once their councils of bishops sat down and rendered a decision, that's it. It was the perfect decision. There is no reason, and it would be insanity, if not treason, to doubt that we made the right decision the first time. The Soviets' motto was freedom of discussion, unity of action. Once it's decided, we all buy in. And that was, or you're out of the party, or you could be sent to an insane asylum or a concentration camp or whatever. Well, what kind of ecclesia is Jesus setting up? Fishermen, businessmen, tax collectors, and lawyers. Not one doctor, not one nurse, not one social worker. And Jesus is the Pope of these dopes. Well, what do I mean by Blob? What was this thing supposed to do? And what did it do? They never, once again, when we think of the Catholic Church, we think of the European civilization after the, not so much the fall of Rome, but Constantine moves the capital to Constantinopolis, Constantine's city, but the Senate can't leave their old plantations. They're stuck in Rome, the emperors in Byzantium. What are you going to do? And he has this all-new ecclesia. He doesn't need the old landed gentry the old chivalric class. He doesn't need the old patrician class to be the ecclesia anymore. There's a new ecclesia, a new party. The Christians. Christianoi. Or as they may have pronounced it, we just will never know, probably, Christianoi. Same idea. The Good Shepherd. They are the ecclesia, which is an old Greek political term. It's a term from Greek politics, democratic politics. Soviet Union was democratic, but there was only one party. There was one ecclesia from which you could choose your candidates and vote for your candidates. They never got to their utopia, did you notice? Did you notice that the Communist Party were, by their own designs, were unable to bring about their communist utopia? They got stuck exactly where we are right now. Who's going to break the log jam? You cannot create order from order. You must create order from chaos and anarchy. Jesus' ecclesia, Jesus' mustard seed could not take root in Judah, let alone, or as the Romans called it, Judea, let alone in Jerusalem, Yehurushalayim. It could not take root. The kingdom could not take root until the old world order had been burned down. Speaking of new world order, I haven't played the theme. We'll get to that. The new world order is not a regimented machine, have you noticed? The new world order has meant chaos and anarchy in Iraq. The new world order has meant chaos and anarchy. And where have we gone since then? The new world order has meant chaos and anarchy, not a new machine. The new world order has meant chaos and anarchy in the United States of America. The new world order has meant chaos and anarchy in Mexico. The new world order has meant chaos and anarchy in Argentina. How many times has their economy actually, it's a laboratory economy, right? It's a test tube economy. They test out all their craziest ideas in Argentina. How many times has that devolved into chaos and anarchy? Lebanon, what's going on in Lebanon? Chaos and anarchy. What's going on in Europe? What has gone on in the former Soviet Union? Chaos and anarchy. War is chaos and anarchy. That's the new world order. You cannot establish a new world order until you have chaos and anarchy. There's this parable. Speaking of parables, there's a parable from the Persian Empire, the Persian religion, and it's the parable of the overturned chessboard. And this was that the Grand Vizier who invented the game of chess, which is the primitive, thick-tongued European way of pronouncing ches, king. Checkmate is chesmat, the king is dead. Why am I hearing anything at all? Anyway, the game of king. So the king would be losing to the vizier who invented the game. So the king would cross his legs or something and knock over the chessboard. They need help to, here, that's my fault. I'm such a clumsy fool. And he put the pieces back on the chessboard so that now he was winning. This is the parable of the overturned chessboard. I love it because it has many levels of meaning. And one of them is you need an entrepreneur sometimes to overturn the chessboard and put the pieces back in a new kind of way. But in order for a Trump or a Lenin or a Lincoln or a Jefferson or a Barack to have a revolution, first you must overturn the chessboard. The pieces have to be scattered first. If the Chinese Communist Party, the only major communist party left on the planet, by the way, and it's going to be the most powerful country in the world next week anyway, if they were trying to absorb us into their blob, they can't swallow us whole. We must be broken down into little building blocks, little individual Lego blocks. First, there must be chaos and anarchy in the United States, all across the country, in the cities and in the countryside. There must be lunatics and brain-dead mummies running for president, and there are no other choices. There must be panic about these choices. There must be lunatics going around shooting people for no reason. There must be every horrible thing you can think of. Gender must be erased, at least in the popular mainstream media. All these things have to happen at the same time in order to create the kind of political and social chaos and anarchy wherein a communist or whatever ecclesiastical revolution can take root. And that brings us to the blob of Jesus. Not yet, it doesn't. Yes, it does. Beware the leaven of the Pharisees. We now know what yeast is. It's a colony of microorganisms, closer to animals than they are to plants. Their colonies are not blobs like, what happened to my ball? Their colonies are networks of filaments, like hairs, that spread throughout a cultural medium. And they digest what they find there. So it wouldn't do any good if yeast just lived on top of the bread dough. It spreads itself through the bread dough, and we help it by kneading and spreading it out. And this changes the bread into something. It's interesting because we now know that the same yeast that turns wheat into bread, makes it tasty, produces these new proteins like glutamic acid that are yummy, and changes the texture. It makes the bread a little easier for us to digest, so it can make us fat and kill us. Are the same yeast that break down the barley sugars in, instead of bread, you can make barley soup, and then and the same yeast will turn that into alcohol. We know that now. It's funny that Jesus uses both bread and wine for the communal sacrament. This is my body, this is my blood. Because both of those things, bread and wine, require yeast. The question is, did he use unleavened bread? I think a Gnostic, I'll tell you what a Gnostic will tell you. He actually used leavened bread. That's why if you go to a mainstream Christian church, the communion doesn't work. They don't know the secret formula. The secret formula is you use leavened bread because it's made from the same yeast. And that's what they'll tell you Jesus is talking about. Beware the leaven of the Pharisees. But it's supposed to be, is it Passover? Is it not Passover? If it's Passover, then he's a good Jew, he should be the unleavened bread, which you and I call a saltine cracker. I am not joking. Matzah bread is saltine crackers, oyster crackers, that's matzah bread. That's all it is. Corned beef is koshered beef. The salt supposedly sucks all the blood out because the blood belongs to God. We're not supposed to eat the blood. Hi, Nathan. Imagine how magical it must be to live with me. Am I a little dim? I want to be a little bit in the shadows. My face doesn't matter anyway. So, that's how the ecclesia operates. And in the actual practice in medieval Europe, into modern Europe, the church was just the grasshopper on the shoulder of the kingdoms of Europe, whispering in its ear and stinging it when it goes in the wrong direction. It sanctified marriages and births and legitimized births. So it controlled the transfer of wealth because the only wealth they had was land. And any other wealth they had went through the estate. So the church and its lawyers pretty much controlled the economy and controlled who had ownership of the economy. And all the time, it's constantly absorbing more and more of that property. It is a yeast in the European feudal economy. It does provide the tasty glutamines, that's for sure. But it has no weapons of its own. It has no army. All it has is intellectual power and spiritual power. That's all it has to control events. But it's spread all across Europe like a network, like a neural network. It's the first neural network. It's organized information services, not just the books of the Bible and whatever, but law books, history books. They make copies, distribute them. They control access to that. They control how it is taught to the, Hamlet's home from law school. You understand that, right? This is a medieval Viking kingdom in the middle of a medieval Viking war. And the son and heir, that gets complicated, is home from law school. The very first scene is about the young soldiers are on guard. Fortinbras Jr. is coming to take revenge. But then when the next scene, they always cut this out. It's a very difficult scene to play for Claudius. Claudius sits down for dinner, and before dinner is served, he's explaining to the court the outcome of the legal case between Fortinbras Sr., who's now dead, and Hamlet Sr., who's now dead. And Hamlet Sr. has won the court case. The war against Fortinbras Sr. has been legally sanctified by the court, which is run by the church. And he gives a very legalistic explanation for this, and this is the happy occasion for tonight's banquet. That play is so fucking modern, it is still ahead of its time. It is still way ahead of its time. The best version to watch the politics of it is with Christopher Plummer, and Robert Shaw plays Claudius. And it was filmed, it's called Hamlet at Elsinore. There's a modern reconstruction of Elsinore Castle, and they produced a movie version of Hamlet on location. They restored Elsinore Castle. It's really cool. And then probably the second best one is it doesn't matter. They're all brilliant. Mel Gibson probably played the craziest Hamlet. Remember, there's a homosexual subtext there with Hamlet. He comes home from college and he's no longer in love with Ophelia. That's not supposed to happen. In a play in those days, that's not supposed to happen. And he seems to be more in love with Horatio. He might be in love with Horatio. We might have a crush on Horatio. It's such a modern play. It's not worth talking about. But that's what the ecclesia becomes. Is this what Jesus designed? I mean, going all the way back to the Gospels, he's talking about the leaven of the Pharisees. He's talking about this insidious mustard infestation and how it grows and how it feeds on its enemies, how it uses the enemies of its enemies to attack its enemies. The mustard seed not only spreads and grows big and strong, but it houses birds, and birds come in and eat the seeds of all the other plants, so that within a few years there's nothing but mustard, and then the birds drop dead from starvation because mustard is toxic. That's Jesus's analogy for the kingdom of God, and it's brilliant. We will give the capitalists the rope to hang themselves with. We will sell them the rope they use to hang themselves with. But they never got off the pot. We have a centrally planned economy. Don't kid yourself. Goss plan is Russian for Federal Reserve Bank, who this week are deciding target loan rates to move money around to feed and otherwise starve other sectors of the economy. Don't kid yourselves, ladies and gentlemen, please. But if you've ever worked in a corporation, it's very Soviet inside the corporation. We just have several competing Soviet-style socialist capitalist economies we call corporations competing against each other. Remember in King Kong, when King Kong and the giant lizard monster, the Tyrannosaurus Rex, were fighting over Fay Ray? We're Fay Ray. Guess who's fighting over us? So, how does that translate to today? We've got separation of church and state. So where's the ecclesia? There's no more ecclesia. Some people would call the deep state the ecclesia. I'm sure the deep state would call themselves the ecclesia. Where's the cultural intellectual vanguard of the ecclesia? Well, let me go back to the analogy of the body. The ecclesia is the body of Christ. Okay, fine. The body has bones, it has muscles, it has digestive tissues, and it has a blob. It has a blob. This is all controlled. You are a sack of corporations. You have twin kidneys. These are sponges that have evolved. They've been absorbed into the blob of your corpus long before there was such a thing as a sponge. These are old genes. Your liver is really an entire economy in and of itself. And your liver began to reach out and grab and attach to itself bags of other inferior societies of cells for its own benefit. Your liver began to control. Your liver was a blob that controlled other blobs for its own benefit, and eventually built the magnificent glory that you see addressing you here today. It is in turn controlled from the inside by a blob. The central nervous system has nothing to do with the rest of your body. Your central nervous system is either a parasite which invaded the liver's body, or it's the parasite that organized. We may never really know. I am hearing myself come from somewhere. I've got the volume turned off on this phone. Anyway. How does it work exactly? We know nerve cells evolved from jellyfish. We know this. Your brain is a jellyfish, which seems to have invaded this body and learned how to control it. And how does it control it? Through stinging cells. Nerve cells originated as stinging cells. When you move a muscle, some of you can move your muscles on purpose. Some of you can do amazing things with your muscles. You can play musical instruments. These muscles, you know, a bear can lay brick and block, okay? These are not the fingers of a primate. These are the fingers. These are not the fingers of a watch repairman. These are the fingers of a guy who tears down concrete buildings so that there's now a void that can be filled by new construction. Your muscle cells don't know they're part of a larger organism. All they know is from time to time they feel in a pain so excruciating they curl themselves up into a fetal position. Involuntarily. They have no control over this. And there are blobs of these cells that can so when you're moving your fingers, you have no muscles in your hand. The muscles are all up in here. When you see a bird fly, it's what? Their whole wing is basically what we see as a wing is two fingers on each hand spread out like this, and there's webbing between, and there's feathers, and it's mostly feathers. Feathers are the most amazing thing. Your muscle cells. So let's take a big muscle like the bicep. I want to lift something. Okay. So all of these millions upon millions of muscle cells are contracting in pain. These are harnessed. What kind of cells were they? And your nerve cells coming out of your brain that control those contractions are stinging those cells with pain to make them contract. That is how your brain controls the rest of your body. With pain. You don't feel the pain because the blob tunes out the pain of the muscle cells that are being contracted. It tunes that out. It has tuned it out in evolutionary over time. It can feel, but it's a little complicated. But how this blob works is it's just this network of jellyfish cells that run through this sack of organs and muscle tissue and has learned to control it in very selfish ways through pain signals, through modified stinging cells. And this is how it works. It's a very small percentage of any mammal's body, even the human with a huge brain. Is it 10% of our body is the jellyfish, the blob? So when I talk about the blob, I'm not even talking about a railroad type of network. What I'm talking about is a very soft and very vulnerable, and it's not so much. The brain has no muscles. All it has is electrochemical signals. The nerve cells can't move, but they can enslave other cells and make them move. You are a slave. You are literally a slave to your brain, which has so much computing power it can not only control your body. You've seen the work a brain surgeon can do, or these people who paint murals on the side of a grain of sugar. You've seen this, right? It's ridiculous. Also has enough computing power to build a matrix for itself, a little heaven for itself to live in so it can just ignore the outside world. That's the blob. So what's the blob of Jesus? Is it the ecclesia, which is no longer, the ecclesia has been surgically removed from the state. So what blob, what jellyfish moved in? How many nerve cells stayed behind and regenerated more nerve cells? Yeast cells. One little bit of bread will inoculate another whole loaf of bread, and the yeast will spread like a nervous system, like a venereal disease. Well, it's also a venereal disease. It's the same yeast. What about the internet? What kind of blob is that? So the blob I'm talking about is like the human brain, but there's one very important difference. Whatever brain cells you're born with, that's all you get. You burn a brain cell, it's gone, it's never replaced. Muscle cells are replaced, bone cells are replaced. Your skeleton is replaced every 10 years. It's ludicrous. It's ludicrous. But not this. But the blob we're talking about, obviously individual nerve cells are coming and going all the time. It is a very blobby blob. It's a very dynamic blob. What controls the blob is not the wiring. What controls the blob is the master control program, the operating system of the blob. The brain operates other tumors in the body, other blobs of cells. The brain operates those. The blob that I'm talking about is the nerve network, but it's constantly changing and evolving. It's not fixed. It's not like a tree where the main structure of the roots is fixed. The blob changes. The main structure remains the same. What controls the blob is not a physical network of people. What controls the blob is a culture, a discipline, a programming, a training, software. Software controls the blob. But just like software in this blob has only partial, limited, and delusional control over the rest of the blob, so the blob, that's its main weakness. The camouflage is excellent. The flexibility is excellent. It can evolve in response to changing conditions. But the whole thing, don't forget, the whole thing is bounded within the shell of a cracked nut. And in fact, I would argue that a lot of the people we're talking about they're not components of the physical network of the blob. People, that person, not just their thoughts and ideas, that person is actually part of the software of the blob. It's an analog computer, not a digital computer. It's an analog computer. And some of the software seems to be physical. It would look physical to you. Or you can have a camshaft as a machine. It's physical. But really, what a camshaft is a program. It's software. It's stored on a wooden or iron camshaft. The blueprints for making a human being are not pictures that say put a sugar molecule here and a protein molecule here and tie it all together with no. DNA does not decode into the Star Trek. Remember the Star Trek blueprints of the Enterprise? They were just there were no details whatsoever. No. It is a program. It is a collection of programs for building proteins. That is all the strand of DNA is. A strand of DNA is a library of little programs that construct proteins. That is all DNA is. And that software turns into this magnificent, miraculous, you know what the word miracle means, right? A distinguished sight. Mirakleo. Behold the distinction. Behold the distinction. All software. Stored in a very, very delicate strand of protein. Hi, Kevin. What's that got to do with today's premium episode, which I'm about to start? I think I made my point. I just thought it was interesting. Or is is the blob of Jesus the software, the word? This was debated 2,000 years ago. It's being debated now. Some people more brilliantly than others. Is it just the book? Is it just the word? What is the word? Is Greece the word? It's funny because Christos, Chrism, that's the Greek word for Greece. That's where the Germans got the word Greece. Greece is the word. Greece is the word. Krestos, the sweet man, ladies, the sweet man, as in the pure man, the wise man. Don't forget, I know you guys watch science documentaries. You've seen those cordyceps fungi that attack insect brains. Like ants are little robots, and there's a fungus that reprograms the robot in bizarrely specific ways. Then the ants have a response. There's one colony of ants has a response. Two soldiers detect a diseased member. They don't kill it. That would spread the disease. They pick it up and they carry it way out of the city to a burial ground. Then they kill it. Then they back into opposing. They back up into opposing parking spaces and sit there and die. This supposedly evolved naturally. Maybe I should just. Oh, is it here? Is it coming from here? This system is almost perfected. That might have done it. Did that do it? That might have done it. That was what the problem was. I had another tab open that could hear me. Your dad also watches? Now thank you so much. Mwah. Here, let me kiss a British penny for you. This is worth more than your car, by the way. I'm out of toilet paper. I'll have to get some more. That's not. Well, what's the stinging cell that the blob uses today? What's the sting? What bags of cells? Yeah, somebody said that Somebody said your liver is just a bag on the side of the stomach, but somebody also said that your whole body is just a bag on this, because it's a computer jargon thing. Windows is a bag on the side of DOS. It's just a layer of programming on top of DOS, literally. So it's a bag on the side of DOS. So your whole body is just a bag on the side of your liver. You know you have another brain in your pelvish regions, right? There's that ganglion down there is altogether it's bigger than a dog's brain, I think. You do have another brain in your tummy with thoughts of its own. It's not allowed in the Matrix, but it understands the back channels of the rabbit hole. This blob we're after, what are the stinging cells? There are pleasure cells, but you're like, these cells don't care about pleasure. All they respond to is pain. See, your stomach doesn't have any muscle tissue. Your brain has no control over your stomach whatsoever. Your brain has no control over your kidneys. Your brain only has direct control over muscles, and that includes the heart and the diaphragm. Your brain has no control over your lungs. It only has control over the muscles that power the lungs. That's all the brain has control over. Don't tell it that. It'll freak the fuck out. It has no control over the weather. It has control over its perceptions of weather, and when properly motivated, can construct illusions of breathtaking grandeur and persistence. Albert Einstein said reality is an illusion, albeit a persistent one. The Manson family? What do you mean he was interested? I hope he's watching. Listen, they get this in heaven. This is free in heaven. If you get into heaven, part of your thing, you get into heaven, you get a free subscription to the Stones Unturned podcast. Wait till I get there. You've read Paradise Lost, right? It was written by a lawyer. Paradise Lost was written by a lawyer. John Milton was a lawyer who became an English professor. Well, speaking of the Blob, maybe I better go premium only right about now and get the. I am recording this. Let me get this recorded. If the power goes off, the stream will stop. So I'm going to go premium live stream only. I'm going to ignore you guys for a minute. I'm going to record this really quick. Well, no, I can start. I'll stay on YouTube for. Nope, I'm still getting that echo. It's coming from this phone. I don't think I need this on right now. I can come back to this later. It's just bugging me. This microphone might pick it up. So, what's going on? In case you've been on Mars, Trump got shot. A little. Maybe he got shot as much as he deserves. Sometimes people get exactly what they deserve. He didn't deserve to get killed, but he deserved to get shot in the ear. And he gets a badass scar out of it. Oh yeah, right, Kevin. Then there's we're coming screaming. Everything goes back to the Manson family, but we will be touching more and more and more on JFK in the next couple of weeks. So all my JFK people, you can come out of hibernation now. We will be talking JFK because the JFK is like the peak of the blob here. Probably, you could pretty much say that. Are we looking at? Is this the same blob? But obviously, it's got different personnel, and probably personnel who work in different departments now. Because I'm telling you, without the cooperation of many people inside the Secret Service, JFK doesn't happen. CIA, blah, SMEIA. It's Secret Service. Without the Secret Service, without cooperation from the Secret Service, what happened yesterday, what happened Saturday, doesn't happen. Sorry. This is not a screw up. Somebody is inside. And look what happened. It turns out that the director, and she had the credentials, supposedly. So if she can't plead incompetence, if she can't plead, well, I'm just a diversity hire, and she's not, then what happened Saturday must have been the plan. The Secret Service is not a cross your fingers and hope. That is not your prescription. That is not your directive. Cross your fingers and hope is not your directive. You create a secure space. That's what you do. That's what you plan for. And she just went on record saying that plans were fine before the shooting happened, like the morning before earlier that morning. Master Shaman and Warlock Carlos Dunn. Oh, there's two Kevins. That's all we need. We need another John. We need another Joshua. We need another John. And we need another Colonel, Major, Sergeant, Private, interchangeable cogs. The Blob we're talking about, they're not perfectly interchangeable cogs. The cogs come and go. The network, the tendrils of tentacles of stinging cells, that's culture. Who controls the nerve system of the Blob controlling itself? Let alone how the Blob controls everything else. The Blob controls... One form of pain is inflicted through the media. The Blob controls the dream circuitry. Have you noticed? Who's controlling the dream circuitry? But nobody's watching. Did you see this? Did you see the news? Disney Plus used to get 2 million viewers a day. Now they're down to less than 200,000 viewers per day. They're down to 167,000 viewers per day. Everybody's watching YouTube. They're not even watching Netflix anymore. Everybody's watching YouTube. They don't know what to do about it. Kids don't have the patience to sit through commercials. They don't have the patience to sit through a music video. They take too long. The Blob, the Blob, the Blob. We have seen on the Stones Unturned Premium website, you have seen we're getting a pretty clear picture of the Blob as it stands lately, and as it has evolved. There are generational changes in the cells that run the Blob. There are changes in the master control program. Who writes the master control program? Who maintains it? Who tweaks it? I've suggested our friend Peter, interesting name, is one of these popes. Or that's supposed to be his job. But he's obviously... We'll come back to him later. For today, let's take a look at some of the things that are supposedly true about this attempted assassination, if any of it's real. Speaking of segues, oh yeah, things that have outsmarted the Secret Service. A bag of cocaine. They have no idea where that cocaine came from. It could have been anthrax, and no one has any idea where it came from. This is either massive extensive incompetence, or it's the plan. Which is it? Is this the plan, or is it Memorex? Oh, there's a guy talking about Operation Mockingbird being part of that group of stinging cells. You frighten people with scary movies about terrorists or whatever, right-wing terrorists or whatever. You you anesthetize them with Disney. I think he and other people, of course, you know, we're all out here hustling for a buck. They wildly overstate the blob. A lot of the blob's power is an illusion of power. Don't forget that. There aren't as many of them as you think, but the reach of their stinging cells and their tendrils goes pretty far. They're highly skilled. And they don't all know that they're part of some bigger blob either. Don't forget that either. But there's an ecclesia of the ecclesia. Bishops on up. I remember what my point was. My point was this: the Assyrians. The Assyrians invent the bishop. The Persians will call it a satrap. This is not a king and then there's they're dukes and barons, and what they owe a percentage to the king. This is a new innovation. What the Assyrians invent is the overseer. Before, when an army conquered another city, then you just agreed to pay the tribute, and in return for which I would protect your city. But now, what the Assyrians do is they leave behind a team of overseers to make sure you're doing things right, and they audit your books constantly. Think of them as the Federal Reserve Bank, auditing your books constantly, and keeping an eye on your culture, and keeping an eye on your political speech. The Greeks come, the Greek word for this is episkopos, overseer. And they become the stinging nerve cells of this global ecclesia of the Catholic Church, are the bishops. Because they can consecrate a marriage or divorce. They can legitimize a child or bastardize a child with the wave of a pen, his magic pen on the sacred parchment. You no longer own shit. You no longer own the shit in your shitter. I own it now, or the king owns it now, or the church owns it now. That was what I forgot. The Assyrians invent this, and the funny thing is, the Nazis were fascinated by the Assyrians. And you'll notice the Assyrians, it's all blitzkrieg, it's all control, it's all overseers, it's all... And they are so universally hated. There's like this massive rebellion, and they're almost exterminated. So there's a lot we don't know about them. They didn't leave much trace behind after they were wiped out. Would-be Trump assassin spotted by cops twice, 26 minutes before he wounded the ex-pres. A clear picture is emerging of the exact timeline of staggering failures. Thomas Matthew Crooks was spotted at least twice by cops, 26 minutes before he opened fire. I'm paraphrasing so I don't get kicked off YouTube. The Beaver County Emergency Services Unit. I think I still have my badge, my old badge. The Beaver County Emergency Services Unit. When you have an emergency anywhere in Beaver County, call this number. Trained and dedicated rangers will be on the way. Notice cooks on the roof took a picture of him and reported it around 5:45 p.m. And There was a local police sniper team stationed inside the building. How's that for chutzpah? I'm just now reading this article. Was being used by local police as a watch post for snipers to scan for threats. Cops were inside, but not on the roof. Maybe a cop was on the roof. This kid wasn't in the local police auxiliary, was he? You've noticed Jake Tapper, everybody have just turned on Biden. Loyalty. They're almost as loyal. They're like these mafia. I'm on YouTube. I'm going to watch my language. Loyalty, loyalty. They would go through bags of dimes every day. Loyalty. You know who you need to watch. Keep your eye. Don't turn your back on. The guy is always talking about loyalty. When they talk about loyalty, that's when you know they don't have a loyal fucking bone in their body. Spotted by cops twice. Crooks was able to scale the building unchallenged before firing off up to 8 shots. They still don't know how many shots were fired. How many shell casings did they find? Up to 8 shots? Well, how do you know it wasn't 10? Are they trying to figure out? Okay, there were 3 shots fired at Kennedy. One hit a tree branch and ricocheted off the curb. One hit him in the back of the neck, passed through his neck, and passed under and hit Governor Connolly, the real target. Don't forget, he's the real target. The third bullet did a U-turn. It bounced off the curb. Two minutes of footage that could go down in history as a low point for the Secret Service and the agency's more than 100-year history of protecting U.S. presidents. Well, protecting or going through the motions of protecting. We'll never know how many assassinations they stopped. But the only thing that stopped Squeaky from was the gun jammed, or she deliberately left the chamber empty. If you believe anything a member of the Manson family tells you. If you believe anything the Secret Service tells you. What they have is a 100-plus year history of, including Abraham Lincoln. What you have is a 160-year history of them failing to protect presidents. I'm sure there have been many times. People start warning the authority. I mean, it's hard to believe that this is either mass. This is the entire team assigned to Trump were all numbskulls. I mean, she had 27 years experience, and then she served several years as the head of global security for PepsiCo. Was she fired? Or was she lured away? Why would she leave that job and come back to government service? I mean, Joe Biden specifically relentlessly nagged to get her that job. And this was the Secret Service that to this day has no idea who brought the cocaine into the White House. Maybe their power is mostly an illusion. Maybe they've never been any more maybe it's just all for show. You've seen the movie The Brink's Job, right? I don't want to give you any spoilers, but the one with Columbo, the one starring Peter Falk, you have to, if you like, I don't even care if you like heist movies. This was the movie that really showed, this was really the first movie that showed criminals as ordinary working class guys they're facing hard times, and, you know, they're crooks, but most of them have jobs. They have jobs. They're trying to make a big score. And Peter Falk is the leader. He tells them it's all a show. They don't have any security in that place. It's all a show. It's all a brand. It's just advertising. It's just insurance. Hi, Ivana. I hate to tell you this, Medley, but the Clintons don't matter at all anymore. Hi, Tony. The Clintons are old hat. They're out. They probably don't have a pot to piss in. They're probably sponging off the charity of friends right now. And with Epstein locked up, I don't know where Bill's staying. Has anybody seen Bill lately? He might be in the alley going through your trash cans. They're out. They have nothing to offer anybody. They are useless. They are completely useless. They've lived too long. Bill in particular he should have died a long time ago. I just want to see Hillary live to be 120 and become more and more and more useless and more irrelevant. One local cop did manage to get hoisted onto the roof and came face to face with a gunman who pointed his rifle at the officer. And the cop was still pulling himself up, so he had to let go and face with the weapon. Well, what was your plan? What were you planning to do? You were hoisted up? I'm not picking necessarily on this one particular cop. I'm picking necessarily on his commanding officer. What was your plan when you got up there? It's like the sniper who jumped out of his skin when he saw shots being fired. That's not a sniper. The failure in Butler could also have been because Crooks's position on the farther side of the roof might have placed him just out of sight of the counter sniper team stationed near Trump. Well, you got a clear shot. And also, obviously this thing was planned. When did they announce Trump was going there? How long? How much time? Because his parents are supposedly pretty. We're going to talk a lot more detail about his parents in the premium stream here in just a minute. Those were his parents. When you saw me snooping on his parents Sunday, those were his parents for sure. They're much more interesting than the media have admitted so far. They're supposedly pretty active locally. They would be among the first to hear that any major a presidential candidate was coming. When was it announced to the public? When was this announced to the public? When did they first announce that? Somebody find that out for me. Make yourselves useful. Find out when it was first publicized he was going to appear, and appear at that location. Because it's it's their county fairgrounds, right? Your ex's lawyer's name is Becky Beaver. There's a RV dealership over in Indiana called Tom Raper Ford. An RV. One officer went up, gunman pointed at him, he went back down and called the secretive service. Seinfeld's Magic Loogie. When was it announced? Because he was stationed at the absolute perfect location. It was actually, and not only that, but he didn't have to worry about any rally goers climbing up there to rubberneck because the cops would keep them away. It isn't just that he was hiding from the cops. But apparently a lot of people saw him. I argue Trump's not that easy to hit. He's pretty animated. He got the elevation right. He was dead on balls accurate. It's just that Trump, did you try sneaking up behind him instead of in front of him? I wonder what was his plan when he was, hey, hoist me up here and I'll what? Yeah, he kept standing up. Can we see this video? Is this the video? Multi-feed video montage. I'll look for it on YouTube. It'll be someplace. I just want to make sure I save it. I got some other videos that might get deleted. My conspiracy theory is that the the shooting of Trump was actually just a diversion from the assassination of Richard Simmons. He died the day after his birthday, so he was the first openly gay celebrity, right? Never hid it. He didn't have to come out of the closet. He was never in the closet, right? He was the first one, and for a long time, the only one. And went ahead and camped it up. I mean, he was just being himself. He was a guy out here being himself. His attitude was like, yeah, I'm gay. Now get your fat ass off that sofa and start moving around. He didn't let it become a distraction. Cops were inside, but not. Their excuse is, well, we weren't on the roof. This is what tickles me. Look at Uvalde. No excuses anywhere. No one trying to do their job anywhere. The door didn't lock, right? Wasn't it broken or somebody left the door open? Nobody did their job. And the media just, well, that's one of those things. Here we have it again. Local cops, just as bad as the Secret Service, nobody doing their job. Their excuse is, well, we weren't doing our job. Well, what do you expect from us? We weren't doing our jobs. That's our excuse. A good con artist will show you exactly what he's doing while he's doing it. Why weren't you up on the roof? Because we weren't doing our job. Are you stupid? We were in the building, but we were at the party, but we didn't meet the hostess. Well, then you weren't at the party. You weren't at the rally. You weren't providing security at the rally. That's not what you were doing. And it isn't one person who can be shit canned. It's the director on down. Has anybody checked PepsiCo lately? How many dead executives do they have during her tenure? How many people got kidnapped during her tenure? PepsiCo is not just about selling poison to your children. PepsiCo owns a lot of crap. PepsiCo owns a lot of stuff. She's the head of global security. That's a little spooky. Somebody who's former Secret Service and goes to work in the corporate world on that scale, that's a spook. Spooks are not guys who carry and gals who carry ID badges from the Department of State. They're not spooks. You understand that, right? They're bureaucrats. They might be the people who are interfacing with the spooks, but the spooks are people who are, they're not really like pickpockets on the street. Spooks are people who used to have government jobs. Now they work in private industry or they're mercenaries or whatever. They're like this with the deep state people that they used to, the guy who replaced them. They're like this. That's a spook. And they might have a retired government ID or something they carry with them. And a lot of the people who might arrest them, a lot of the people who might want to, they remember that person and it's like, he's pretty kind of spooky. That's a spook. There are spooks who are official, but they're usually military personnel. You don't have a foreign affairs officer who's doing covert shit. But they're interfacing with people who are doing covert shit. And those people might be active duty military. A lot of them are military reserve. So they got that military ID and it just chases people away. But like Epstein supposedly waving spooks at people all the time, real spooks don't do that. Spooks aren't supposed to break the law. So he's a popcorn spook, but he obviously interfaces with a lot of spooks. He's operated by spooks, who in turn are operated by actual pencil-pushing bureaucrats. Some of whom could easily, kill me with a rubber band and a paperclip. But what I'm saying is, when they're walking around on active duty, foreign service officers, foreign affairs officers, they're not breaking the law. It's insanely risky. I mean, they're not supposed to be breaking the law, any law. Just like the mafia. You can't be going around breaking the law because you're going to bring heat down on all of us. So when they're walking around on active duty in their government job, they can't be breaking the law, international law or domestic law. But they hire people to do that. Yeah, watch Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy and Smiley's People. It's a pretty good, in some ways it's accurate of the quasi-official people. There's a permanent undersecretary to the Minister of Defense, Lacon, who is he's the bureaucrat who interfaces with the spooks. They're all off budget. Nobody knows Control's real name. Nobody. Not even Lacon knows Control's real name. The rest of them might have government jobs. Most of them draw government pensions. Like Smiley has a government job, but there are very few of them. And they can't get caught even at home doing anything illegal. It's a lot like that. And it's smaller than you think. Here's another reason why you don't rehire. Once they leave government service, they've retired, they've locked down their pension, and they've gone into private work like this. PepsiCo is a multinational corporation. You don't rehire them for government jobs of this security, as far as I can recall. And then you assign her, or whatever, what's her pronouns? To protect your main political rival who now, after the debate a couple weeks ago, there's only one way you could possibly beat Trump. And you're on multinational television not protecting Trump at all. I mean, here's something else nobody's brought up. Everybody has criticized them for letting him hang around on the stage and look for his shoes. They didn't take him off the back of the stage. They didn't have a pre-planned escape route, and if they did, they didn't follow it. Well, what if there was a second shooter? They seem to have known there wasn't a second shooter. Not only did they know there was a shooter, they knew there wasn't a second shooter. because they know you don't need a second shooter. You know what? Here's just one more evidence of their screw-uppery. They didn't bring a second shooter. I thought you were the second shooter. You know how women are. They can't put their guns back in their holsters. They're not assigned to guard the payroll. They're assigned to guard the only man who could possibly win the presidential election besides Biden. And there's really, the way it looked Saturday, you really there's only one way to stop them. And now you're hoist on your own Peter. It's not Petar and it's not Petard. It's Peter. It is a pun. Shakespeare is full of nothing but puns. Half of them R-rated and the other half X-rated. Yes, Peter is a form of French mine. They invented the mine. They called it Peter. So Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, he alters a document. He alters a death warrant and gets his friends killed because his friends were supposed to bump him off. Now they are hoist on their own Peter, which would be a very painful, not to mention embarrassing situation to find yourself in. Shakespeare, as a boy, had watched his Uncle John drawn and quartered by government soldiers. Something about not paying their taxes. Well, they were smuggling wool to avoid the taxes. His father and his uncle. His Uncle John got caught. Rosewater? How many Secret Service were in on this? How many of them were women? I don't get it. Women love Trump. They loved Bill Clinton. Loved him. They love Trump. Women love Trump. I haven't met a woman who isn't voting for Trump. This is what's so cool about Trump. You can't plan this. Trump pal Nigel Farage gets a milkshake thrown at him after running for office. Trump gets actually a scar, and it's not on his ass or someplace. He has to take his shirt off, has to take his pants. Right? I've got a scar on my cheek. I have to take my pants off to show you. That's going to look like a pirate or a biker. It's almost like they knew that there was one and only one shooter. Yeah, we couldn't see him until I just fired blindly into the night and I happened to hit him. I'm having problems with this. Demolition Ranch YouTuber. Trump shooter's parents, registered Pennsylvania professional counselors. There's more to it than that. Social workers in Pennsylvania since a couple months before he was born. He was born in 2003.
The Voyage is the only assisted living.
Maybe it's time for a premium episode. I'll get to that in a minute. Let me get to the rest of the news. Let me show you what else I found out about him and his significant others. Speaking of the Blob. Officer reported man at Trump rally with rangefinder 30 minutes before assassination attempt. Why is this so loud? It was very poor quality audio, just so you know. A local law enforcement officer spotted a suspicious man carrying a rangefinder in or just outside the venue. The officer reported the sighting to state police. He took a photo, and there was a discussion about whether what he was carrying was a pair of binoculars to try and see the rally better. It was actually a rangefinder. Well, I'm going to jump out on a limb and speculate here. I think this boy might have been adopted. Was he special needs? He seemed to have been very intelligent. He got very good grades in school, very high grades in math and science. He won prizes in math and science. History, steeped in history, including the JFK assassination. Okay, Medley, thanks for. I'm going to record the premium part of this episode, and you'll be able to see it tonight. It's only about 12 o'clock now, so you'll be able to see it by tonight. Mwah. Good luck at the doctor. They got into his phone, said they can't find a motive. Well, the motive was he wanted to shoot Trump. What else? I think that's it. I think I'm going to just go ahead and record this premium episode, which you can watch me do that live on the Thanks Herbal Tea. Yeah, the burn after reading stuff, they never do that because they'd have to type it in the first place, and they will never do that. You will get a directive from the Secretary of State. The president has asked us to see what we can do about opening the port of Benghazi to shipments on certain ships. Thank you for your efforts. Signed, Uncle Sucker. This goes to the station chief, who then decides what to tell the ambassador about it, or whoever the highest ranking foreign service officer is. The highest ranking foreign service officer will then, in consultation with the station chief and other key personnel, decide what to do about it. Well, the only reason that these certain ships can't get into this port is because there are certain pirates. Now, officially, the United States is not involved in dealing with pirates in this region. This is supposed to be Portugal's problem. Portugal's not doing shit about it. We all know Portugal's not doing shit about it. This is off the record, Nancy. And so blah, 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 blah. And the station chief tells the ambassador, I might know a way. We've used it in the past. Something might be done about these pirates. That's wonderful. That would sure make Washington happy. So they do it. Kill the pirates, bribe them, whatever it's done. There's nothing from Washington that you burn after reading because it's never typed in the first place. Will no one rid me of this troublesome priest? Will no one help me unload this shipment of weapons for the Muslim Brotherhood? And there are factoti, who make it happen. Those are called operatives. They're operators. Operators operate operatives. So the station chief, or there's maybe somebody else there, will contact, like Huma Abedin, for example. The Secretary of State calls in aid Huma Abedin. We're having trouble getting this shipment of weapons delivered. So Huma Abedin calls Mark Turry. But there's no piece of paper from Washington that says call Mark Turry. Do you understand? Huma Abedin is an operator, and apparently I should quit making fun of her. Between being engaged to the son of George Soros and being able to have weapons delivered any place, any time, like fucking Uber Eats, that's an operator. She had some title that allowed her access to the Secretary of State. To be She's more like a personal assistant, right? She was not Undersecretary of State. Or she called an operator who called Mark Turi. Huma Abadan, 2012. What was her job? Political staffer, vice chair of her campaign, Hillary's campaign. Remember when Bill Casey was the chair of Ronald Reagan's campaign and then became director of the CIA? Huma Abedin was vice chair of Hillary Clinton's campaign. Before that, she was deputy chief of staff to Clinton, U.S. Secretary of State. So she had a job. She was deputy chief of staff, but that's not so much of State Department. In the series, Yes, Minister, Bernard, the permanent private secretary, the chief of staff to the minister, he's a government appointee. The minister doesn't choose his chief of staff. And up until the time Yes, Minister was being filmed, your political advisor wasn't allowed in your office. You had to meet him outside of work hours. The president, the secretary of state, they pick their chief of staff. This is somebody from their personal business world that they bring with them to Washington usually. Everybody knows it. But to get the security clearances, you have to be a government employee. So she's deputy chief of staff. She was also traveling chief of staff and former traveling chief of staff. She called the chief of staff, "Will no one rid me of this troublesome priest?" And the chief of staff calls an operator who calls an operative, and so on down the line. Nothing needs to be burned because nothing is issued by uncles on any official government. What gets issued on the government stationery is, "Will no one rid me of this troublesome priest?" And the factotum makes it happen. The chief of staff. I'm not defending Trump, but I'm sure cheering for him. It's like Tom Brady and his 8 rings. I have to stand up and salute. Not only did he take a bullet, you don't get to pick where the bullet hits you, but he got up, put his shoes back on, and got back on the campaign trail. That I have to salute. Even a sociopath is brave. Yeah, and he may die. Mr. Copenhaver, he may die. He's a registered Democrat. Musk plans to donate $45 million a month to Trump Super PAC. Until you bastards cry for mercy. This election's over. For better or worse, this election's over. Now you got, okay, this is the Post, but, well, Lester Holt, MSNBC, is starting, now he's asking Biden some actual questions with some actual teeth in them. All of a sudden, they've all turned against him. This is the New York Daily Worker. Sorry, New York Daily News. I read both. I read the Post and the Daily News. You know Archie Bunker read the Daily News, right? The Daily Worker. Archie Bunker was a good union man. Pink right down to his underwear. He just didn't know it. What if they don't like communism? We call it something else. Beloved salon owner shoved to death by son off Manhattan Riverside Park embankment. That's not what beloved means. Beloved salon owner murdered by son. That's not what beloved means. Beloved means the opposite of murdered by your own children. Bill Cosby was beloved. What's his name? Jimmy Savile was beloved. Your own son shoved you under a train or shoved you off a bridge. Isn't that the old Chinese curse? May you be beloved. CNN.com fact check Biden's NATO press conference. See, the actual headline says checking his lies. Fact check Biden's false and misleading claims at high stakes news conference. This is on CNN. Boy, you can taste the loyalty. You can smell it. Oh, relax. The FBI is leading the investigation into attempted assassination of former President Trump. It was Russian disinfo prop. It was all a hoax. That's what the FBI is going to say. What are they going to say? What can they say? If this was planned, it couldn't have been planned any better by Trump. To force your opponents into. Abraham Lincoln appointed Seward his Secretary of State, second in command. Seward hated Lincoln's guts. Why would he do that? You know, Lincoln read Byron, Shakespeare, and Machiavelli, and Black's commentaries on the law and blah 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 blah. Blackwood, Lord Blackwood, Black's Law Dictionary. Get yourself a copy of Black's Law Dictionary and read it all the way through. What was my point? Abraham Lincoln read Machiavelli. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Nobody was closer to Lincoln than Seward and the other Republicans. Lincoln and Douglas were like this. You know that, right? They're both on the board of directors of the Illinois Central Railroad. Secret Service now giving Trump presidential level protection after. I thought that's pretty much what they were doing already. Here's a former president running for another term. Okay, we saw this yesterday. Yeah, you saw this. Did I show you this? They have no idea what they're doing. They don't have any idea what they're doing. It's chaos. I understand the theory. If you're guarded by an army of Karens, no one would dare touch you. I hate to sound like an old man, but just what exactly in the Sam hell is going on with our country? All right, goodbye, YouTube. I'm going to go to the premium only stream. I'll keep the premium only stream going. You guys can watch me record the next episode, and it'll be uploaded soon. I'm going to show you everything else I found out about our friend, Mr. Crooks, and his family. Okay, thank you all very much. Mwah. Be safe, be well. God bless, whether you like it or not. May God bless you anyway. May God give you exactly what you deserve. And please, please spay and neuter your cannibals. Hi, Mr. Anderson. Get plugged in because you don't want to miss this episode either. I'll live stream while I record it, but I can't live stream this kind of stuff on YouTube. So you got to be signed up for the premium website. Click the link in the description of this video, and I'll see the cool kids over there. You can always, there's a big library of episodes you can watch, and you can watch. I'm recording today's episode, so thank you all very much. I will see you. I probably won't pregame the episode. Well, I might pregame the episode, I'll probably come back on again later when I get the episode uploaded and it's ready for you guys to watch. I'll pregame it in that sense. You didn't hear the theme. The theme, actual Holly Weird not Holly Weird. He's not Holly Weird. Listen to the theme. I'm Professor Thomas Henry Horan. I'm a stickler for detail. Stay plugged in to the Stones Unturned podcast.
He reads everything.
You better bet your bippies he reads everything. Is this another situation where there's a terrible lag? Yep, there it goes. Okay.